Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to start the session. We're going to go on a journey to different continents in the world, 2 different continents, because the Canadian Aboriginal, I almost said their old name, the Communities, Alliances and Networks has been the Secretariat for the International Indigenous Working Group on HIV and AIDS for 10 years, and that's coming to an end. And the International Indigenous HIV AIDS Community, a new NGO, is taking over that role. So welcome to our workshop. This is the income generation based on ancestral knowledge and natural resources of Indigenous people living with HIV or at higher risk of infection. And this was a pilot project because we've never done anything like this before. So I want to acknowledge the territory we're gathered on, these ancestral lands, Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis, of course. I'm from Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We're Mississauga Anishinaabe. We're a special kind of Ojibwe. We're part of the Three Fires Confederacy. I also have Haudenosaunee blood from 6 nations of the Grand River, or the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. My dad's 5th generation English, and I've been living with HIV for 32 years. I was diagnosed in 1990. So I've been living most of my life with HIV now. It's weird. I don't know what it'd be like not to have HIV. Imagine if they took HIV away from me, it would be hard. Who am I without HIV? I don't know. I wouldn't know anymore. It's a very, very strange position to be in. I mentioned before, I was the coordinator of IIHAC, the International Working Group on HIV and AIDS, for 10 years, working for CAN, because CAN is IIHAC's secretariat. CAN is the host of this International Working Group. And in that job, I was like pushed to apply to the UN AIDS Board, the United Nations Joint Program on HIV and AIDS. My bosses and different people living with HIV said, you're working internationally, you should get on UN AIDS. The United Nations needs to start talking about Indigenous peoples and HIV. So I applied and I actually got on that board, and I was the North American delegate representing all of civil society in North America at the United Nations in Geneva at UN AIDS, and I was completely overwhelmed. And now the new NGO delegate sitting right over there, that's Christian Hui, who is the new the North American delegate on the NGO delegation of the Program Coordinating Board of UN AIDS. So while I was at the UN AIDS program, they have it's a joint program. That means that there's lots of United Nations agencies that work with UN AIDS. And so I started getting to know them as well, all the different players, getting to know them on a personal level and building relationships with these different UN agencies. In December of 2019, for Indigenous AIDS Awareness Week, I invited a person named Shauna Olney. She's Chief of Gender Equality, Diversity, and ILO AIDS, which is at the International Labor Organization. The ILO is a United Nations agency that does a lot of work with Indigenous peoples, actually. And Shauna came to Ottawa and talked about the ILO Convention 169, which talks about the rights of Indigenous peoples, and especially in the world of work, and it also talks about HIV. But earlier that year, the ILO, the International Labor Organization, contracted CAN to produce a small research paper called A Qualitative Study on Stigma and Discrimination Experienced by Indigenous Peoples. And that was for HIV and TB in the world of work. So we used the network of IIHAC, the International Working Group, and reached out across the world to Indigenous peoples on different continents. And we held focus groups and did interviews with them, and we came up with a really cool report about all this stigma and discrimination that's happening for people living with HIV who are Indigenous at work. So this is relationship building. It's really intimidating, because even the Secretary General, the head of the UNA or the United Nations, is just a human being like you and I. And it really boils down to relationships between 2 human beings. When CAN forms a relationship It's not the whole organization really, that snuggles up to another organization. It's two human beings that come together and get to know each other and build trust. And that's what was happening. And over the years, I let them know at the ILO that the IGWA leaders incorporated a new international NGO called IIHAC, the International Indigenous HIV and AIDS Community. So people started to know about IIHAC, and IIHAC was incorporated in 2016 and became a partner of the International AIDS Society. They're the group that puts on those great big international AIDS conferences. You know, AIDS 2022 is coming to Montreal in July. The whole world is coming to Montreal for the International AIDS Conference, and we'll be there as well, and so will likely lots of different UN agencies. But the IGWA leaders knew the day would come someday that the funding would end for CAN to host the international group, and that's why they made the new organization. And we're still quite young. In the summer of 2020, at the International AIDS Conference, the ILO did a presentation about their project, and did a presentation on a policy brief on COVID-19 and Indigenous peoples during our own pre-conference there, because when the International AIDS Conference comes to Montreal, we have a pre-conference for 2 days just for Indigenous peoples. So I was really getting to know ILO and their work with Indigenous peoples, and we were looking forward to other ways we could collaborate, right? So that leads me to this income generation project. And I wanted to tell you that background because it just doesn't happen where we walk up to an agency, we don't know anybody, and we say, hey, can you give us some money to do a project? It's based on a relationship between human beings, that trust, that rapport, you know? So in early 2021, I began talking with the ILO about this possible income generation project, because we all agreed that Indigenous peoples experience HIV rates like more than other population groups, and that the percentage of Indigenous people with stable employment is low, especially now with COVID-19. You know, so many people lost their livelihoods. So we agreed that an income generation project during COVID-19 would help groups of Indigenous people living with and affected by HIV learn how to grow self-sustaining small enterprises focusing on ancestral knowledge and natural resources. So I suggested that, because I was the volunteer executive director of IIHAC, the NGO, that they trusted me. So even though IIHAC didn't have a very long track record, a very young organization, it's very risky for anybody to fund an organization with no real track record. So, but because they knew me, we started to talk about how we could do this. So I checked in with the board of IIHAC, and then we hosted a meeting between the ILO and the board directors, and it was just decided to make preparations. We reached out to the leaders of IGWA, the working group, and the board members of IIHAC, the NGO, and we asked them to advertise this opportunity for 2 or 3 Indigenous groups of people in their countries who could be ready to start the project within a month or two. We were looking at about $35,000 US, which isn't a lot of money, you know, to split and send to 2 different organizations. A process was developed for the NGOs to reach out to groups of Indigenous people. IIHAC received 4 applications, and we chose 2 groups. One in Nepal, you know, the Himalayas in Asia. We have a man from Nepal back there. Hey, Shiva. Shiva wasn't involved in this project, but I know Shiva through Two-Spirited People of the First Nations in Toronto. But, and also in Uganda, so Nepal and Uganda. So in Uganda, they were scaling up the commercialization of traditional medicine for treatment of common conditions like intestinal worms and anemia and stuff like that. And in Nepal, they were using yak wool to produce knitted garments in Nepal, and also got some sewing machines and stuff. And this included purchasing machinery, raw materials, and development. And specifically, what we really focused on was the development of these business plans. Because we're not business people, we're like social workers, we're activists, and so this was really new to us. So the project was titled Income Generation Projects, based on ancestral knowledge and natural resources of Indigenous peoples living with HIV or at higher risk of infection. And with us today, we're beaming in a lady named Didya from the International Labour Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. We have a recording from Skeagya, Yahaya Hills from Uganda to talk about the medicines. And we have Rajesh Didya from Nepal, who's going to show us a video and give us a bit of a presentation. But right now, I want to turn it over to Didi, and that's her, I can't even pronounce her real name, but that's her nickname. Didi Schaff from the ILO. I want Didi to share her experience working with IIHAC. What was it like from her position at the UN, working with this really young organization? And then we'll turn it over to Nepal and we'll talk with Uganda as well. Didi, are you there?
Yes, I am, Trevor.
All right.
It's so nice to be in your very important meeting. We have been looking forward to this opportunity. So I don't know if I prepared a few slides. I don't know if I can share them. If not, I can do it, let's say live. But if the possibility would be there, I would like to share my slides. Oh, I cannot.
Yeah. You're on the screen. We have your slides. You just let us know when to advance them. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. I can't see them, so.
Okay, you're on the first slide right now.
Wonderful. But I think Trevor gave a wonderful introduction of a very complex organizational structure. Thank you. I can see it now. So he already, next slide, please. Trevor already explained a little bit what the ILO, the International Labour Organization, is. It's an agency of the United Nations, and we work for the world of work. It sounds very complicated, the world of work. Why don't we just say work, or we work on work? No. We look at work from a broader context. So not only looking at employment, but also looking at people having incomes, looking at the rights of people. So that's what we do in general. We promote rights at work and encourage decent employment and also opportunities. It's also including social protection for people who are ill or for people who cannot work. And strengthening dialogue on any work-related issues. So what makes us unique in the family of United Nations agencies is that we are the only ones who have a tripartite structure, which means here that we give an equal voice to workers, employers, and governments of the 187 member states. So everybody comes together in meetings and decide on the way forward for the organization. Next slide, please. So I just want to point out a few important conventions that are very relevant for you as well. So a first one is the Convention 111. It's from actually 1958. It's one of the most ratified conventions by countries all over the world. And it looks at discrimination in workplaces. And it describes discrimination as any distinction, exclusion, or preference. So it's a very broad definition of what is discrimination, and it's still very useful because of that. Then the next one is already mentioned by Trevor. It talks about Convention 169. It talks about the rights of Indigenous peoples. And the next one is a recommendation on HIV and AIDS in the workplace, where it is defined how all data of people living with HIV should be managed with confidentiality. There should be no mandatory testing in the workplace, and people cannot be fired or cannot, it cannot affect their career that they live with HIV. And that shouldn't be no discrimination because of living with HIV. Next one, please. So as Trevor was saying, we started with IIHAC. We knew Trevor. It was very important, the things he explained, that we really had a very solid relationship already with Trevor because of the work that was done together. Income generation project is a strategy to create more and better employment for people. This program was created already in the 1980s, and it's implemented all over the world. There are a few guides that have been produced that I will share the links later on the last slide. And for this particular project, we took into account a few, we were not very strict. So we looked at, we wanted to be on Indigenous peoples affected by most at risk of or living with HIV. And their livelihoods should be affected by COVID-19, because we saw, like Trevor was saying, Indigenous peoples are a lot more affected by poverty, by not having a formal employment, by HIV, by COVID-19 also. It should cover ancestral knowledge and natural resources. That we were very insistent on that as well. The first selection, as Trevor explained, was made by the IIHAC board and IGWA. And the project should have a business idea and a business plan. Next slide, please. So this business idea is more or less an idea, what the name already says. It's an idea of what services or goods you want to sell. So what will your project be about? What do you want to produce? How is your market? Who are you going to sell to? You have to know these things before you can really start and say, okay, this might be a good business idea. And how are you going to sell? Are you going to sell in a market? Are you going to sell more to people you know? Are you going to sell online? All these things you have to think about in a business plan. Then you also have to think about what customers want. So do they want to buy your product? Are they interested in the idea? And why are you different than people who produce the same kind of products? For example, in Nepal, we know there's already quite a lot of people working on yak wool and woolen products, but the leader there is a very a skilled entrepreneur, so he had several ideas to set his business apart from the rest of the business. And in Uganda, we had just a very unique idea that would set it apart from the competition. And what effect will the business have on the community and the natural environment? So we don't want to start a business just for the benefit of one person. It has to link back to the community, and it has to benefit more people, and it also has to respect the natural environment. And very important also, starting a new business takes a lot of time, a lot of administration. Things might be new for people who start their own business. So do you really have time to do it and to set it up? Next one, please. So a business plan is really working out more this idea of the business idea. Normally you would organize a plan in such a way that it becomes more or less like the next step would be, the first step would be this, and the next step would be this. So it's really about thinking about what you have to do in order to make, to start and to improve the business. So starting a business is one thing, and then improving a business is something else. This business plan is also very, very useful if you want to, for example, present your plans to obtain resources, or if you want to go to a bank for a loan. You need to have something in writing. What is your plan? How do you think your business will develop in the future? So we specifically asked for a business plan to these two organizations that were selected. And they had to explain the elements of training, how they would incorporate training in this income generation project. What would the production and packaging look like? So this is very important already to start the production process. and also the marketing. So they had to think about what is the product, how much will I ask for the final product to sell it, where will I sell it, and how will I promote it also. And the last thing they had to include in this business plan was about sustainability. So Trevor was saying both of the countries received, I don't really recall if it was $15,000 or $17,000, but after that they should be able to make it sustainable on their own. That's the whole idea. You give some resources to start it up, and then it should really more or less run on its own. Next one, please. So we do need an intermediary organization for small scale projects. We couldn't have done it without IIHAC. We need like some level of administrative processes and administrative procedures and systems in place to be able to transfer resources. So that's why IIHAC was not only the intermediary agency, but also a technical agency and an agency who really pushed the project forward, I think. The implementation period was very, very short. It was less than 5 months, but a lot was achieved. We had also delays due to late reimbursement in the middle of the project from our side, from the ILO. There were a lot of COVID-19 restrictions and cases affecting the team in Nepal. And there was a big change of plans in Uganda that I hope my colleagues will explain as well in the next part of the presentation. So this period was, in fact, looking at it now, too short to make the project sustainable. So we did not achieve the sustainability that we were hoping for. Next one, please. So what for me are the lessons learned is it was really important, the existing leadership skills and entrepreneurship in Nepal. Without that, I think it wouldn't have worked as well. And also the expert knowledge and the really out of the box idea of the traditional medicine and the contacts and infrastructure, and as well Dr. Skeagya is a medical doctor and as well as a traditional healer. So that was a very unique combination that moved the project forward. We have seen that it's important to be flexible, and sometimes with UN organizations it's a bit difficult because we have our rules, we have our regulations, but sometimes we saw, okay, a change had to be made, and it even turned out sometimes to be positive in the example of Uganda. We had very regular follow-up meetings, like twice a month. That really helped to have everybody informed, to know about where things were stuck, what we could do to help to move the project forward. And I think the great technical and administrative support and the personal involvement from Trevor was really key for this project. I think that the commitment also and the motivation of the two implementing organizations towards their communities, because they were very worried about not being able to deliver because of the communities they were implementing this for and with. So they did not do this for individual gain. So this was a very, very important driver for the project. Next, please. So the way forward would be both projects have a business plan, but they need to update it. They need to incorporate where they are now and then look forward, what they want to achieve. So they're not starting at zero anymore, but they're already along the road. So where do they see their business in the future, and what do they really need to get there, to get at that place? And they would be able to present that maybe to a financial, I don't know, a bank or a small microcredit organization. Because yes, some financial support, also maybe from donors, is needed to reach the phase of income generation and to also make the interest of financial organizations in these projects grow. So I think that would be the way forward, the way I look at it. Next slide, please. So that would be my part of the story, but I think what you will hear now is a lot more interesting because this is what you will hear now is on the ground implementation of these two projects. So I hope these slides will be shared with you after the presentation, because I have included links so you can look up what is the ILO, what we do on HIV and AIDS, what we have on Indigenous peoples. Also the guides for starting your own business, which is very useful if you think about wanting to start your own business on your own as well, is very useful. And I have a link here to the qualitative study on stigma and discrimination that Trevor was mentioning before. Thank you. Over to you, Trevor.
All right. Thanks, Diddy from Geneva, Switzerland, for beaming in. And Diddy is going to be hanging out for questions and answers at the end. Let's beam into Rajesh. Rajesh Didya. You notice her nickname's Diddy, and he's Rajesh Didya. That was kind of confusing sometimes. Rajesh, I hope you're all ready there in Kathmandu in Nepal. Let's hear what you have to say, Rajesh. You ready?
Yes. Thank you, Trevor. Namaste, everyone. This is Rajesh Didya from Nepal, and I'm in Newar, the oldest Nepali invitation of Nepal. We call Nepami. So I'm from Bhaktapur, and I am the person, as the Trevor has mentioned, that I cannot imagine that without HIV, what do I do? It's clicked me. I am a person living with HIV since from 2003, and now I'm having ART and working for HIV positive people, drug users, and for needy people. So, okay, namaste everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thank you. So here, I'm having some presentation about my work in Nepal. So I think, may I have my slides? Thank you. Okay, about the project, Trevor and Didi has explained it about the background and everything, all the elements. So I'm going to brief shortly about my presentation. In Nepal, indigenous people officially describe it as a Janajati and Adivasi. So they have a huge population in Nepal. Around about in 26 million people of population in Nepal, about 8.5 millions are indigenous people in Nepal. So in each and every part of Nepal, you will be able to see and find the indigenous life and indigenous people. Next slide, please. So the project title was in Nepal, Suruat Udamsil Mahila Samuha. Suruat is an organization, a community-based organization led by HIV positive drug users, LGBTQI community, and normal people, I could say, who are not infected with any kind of disease. So this project was targeted for indigenous people, especially living with HIV, and in a person who are struggling to get the job or to get any kind of income. So the project has been targeted designed for Bhaktapur and Rupandi district. And around them, we have searched for people who are working on yak wool, especially Nepal and Tibet, and as well as in India. They have lots of knitting work through the yak wool and other wool. So we have started to find, and then we have found that the Newar are very expert on that, which is my community, the indigenous Nepal. So, sorry. And Newar community are doing knitting work from long time, from hundreds of years. They are working on knitting and pottery, which is a traditional they have adopted from their generations. So knowing that, we have collected the members of Newar, especially living with HIV and indigenous people. So who are working from years as a entrepreneur and in income generation experts. So among them, we have selected 42 indigenous people living with HIV and have been trained on skill development. And out of them, 13 indigenous people we have selected for our 2 groups. And on that, due to lots of requests, we have selected 2 indigenous LGBTQI community member for income generation. So then we have divided in 2 groups, 1 group for Bhaktapur and 1 group for Rupandehi. And we started to provide them trainings, and then we have provided them stuff, and we have provided them skill as well. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next, please. So, okay, these are the trainings which is we have provided. We have provided training of skill of knitting, knowledge of yak wool, and to produce, and to about the color, and to measurement the different varieties to attract in designs, I mean smaller pieces. So then with all that, after giving various training, 3 trainings, we have selected the members. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So among them, we have selected 6 Newar who are living with HIV, and they are women. And then we have selected 4 of Magar. They are also indigenous group of Nepal. Then we have selected 1 Rai, then 2 Nepali, 1 Chetri, 1 Gurung, and among them all are, 50% of them, half of them were HIV positive. They are HIV positive, who are living with HIV and who are having antiretroviral therapy for a living. So based on that, this project was designed in 4 pillars. Next slide, please. So the first pillar of business concept is product. So in product, we have selected very traditional and very original material, that's yak wool, which is very known for everyone. And it's a Nepalese tradition that we wear caps, hats, mufflers, scarves. So we select that. Then after, we have second pillar was pricing. We made a very reliable price, normal price than the market, the less than market. And then the third pillar was the place where we will sell. So the project was based in this. So then we set Bhaktapur in Kathmandu and 1 in Rupandehi in Butwal. And then we started outlet. And then from the outlet, we have push sell to the people who are visiting here in the stores. So we have sell on that. And the fourth pillar was promotion. So basically, whenever we will say HIV and indigenous or LGBTQI community, people will discriminate us or to our group. So for that, we have made a very different type of advertisement that we have promo. We selected promo and we started the marketing. Next slide, please. So then the first pillar, we have produced warm socks, gloves, sweaters, and scarves. Next, please. So here are the products: cap, small tiny shoes, hat, sweaters, and scarves. Next slide, please. So about the first pillar, that monthly we have started to, we are able to, or we produced 450 pairs of socks, 450 pairs of gloves, and 450 scarves, pairs of scarves, set of scarves, and 15 sweaters. So this was our first pillar, and we get succeed on that. Next slide, please. So about the price, we made a less. And approximately in 1 month, we have generated $720 per month from these selling. And the price was less than the market. Next slide, please. So the product we sell in local market, we started in Bhaktapur and Butol through our outlets and push sales. Sometime we went to the various NGOs, IUNGOs office, and we started to sell, pushing them that this is our product, please buy and test. So from that we have generated, and then we have visited offices, normal offices of normal people, I mean in local offices, in healthcare centers, and then we have sold there too. Next slide, please. So for promotion, we started Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as FM radio and NGOs. We have meetings with NGOs, INGOs, and even through the outlets. Please, next slide, please. So pricing has made significantly cheaper than the market. For example, one pair of socks, it's cost $1.50. I mean $1.50. But we started to sell on $1.25. So this was our strategy. And then the motto of our promotion was local and handmade. So it has worked, and we started to sell locally and with lots of people. Next slide, please. So additionally, we have supported sewing machine for them who are working, because throughout the sewing machine, they can start to produce new clothes and they can repair old clothes. So it will generate the revenues and the time the group will be gathered there. Next slide, please. So in way forward, this kind of a product, this kind of project must be continued, especially to the HIV positive people and indigenous people. So with that, they can work. We HIV positive people and drug users, we can do, and we can show our work throughout the entrepreneur and throughout the income generation activities. So we need to address these kind of activities globally, targeting indigenous and HIV positive people. So especially a principle by and for and ZIPA, it must be addressed throughout these kind of activities. Next slide, please. Okay, it's all about, I have very short time, and I'm very grateful and honored to be here presenting all at the front of you about my work and about my project with my people. So on the behalf of Suruat, a small community-based organization, I would like to say thank you very much. Very feel delighted to present here. Thank you. Back to you, Trevor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Namaste. Okay, so we're running a little behind, so squishing our question and answer period down to about 2 minutes, but the next speaker has pre-recorded their session because the connection in Uganda is often unpredictable. So to give you a good presentation, we've pre-recorded, and we're going to be hearing from Dr. Skeagya Yahaya Hills, who is the executive director of Promitra Uganda. He's also a dental surgeon, and he is a traditional healer. So he's very multi-talented, and now he's a businessman apparently after this. So let's watch Skeagya's presentation. I find it riveting, very interesting.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. The presentation from Uganda is about self-sustaining small enterprise based on ancestral knowledge from Promitra Uganda, implemented by Buija Traditional Healers Group. I'm Dr. Skeagya. I'm a PhD fellow. I'm a dental surgeon. I'm an indigenous healer. I'm a spiritualist and the director of Prometra Uganda. I'm also the treasurer for this group, Buija Traditional Healers Group. The outline of the presentation relates to the background, objective, activities, sustainability, and the next steps. Uganda has a population of approximately 48.5 million. 74% is rural. Mpigi district, where we are based, has a population of 550,000. 90% of the population is rural. And Uganda has, by 2020, had a record of 1,400,000 cases of HIV AIDS. Prometra Uganda, which I head, I'm the director for it. It's an NGO, which is a national chapter of Prometra International with 28 chapters worldwide. We promote traditional medicine through practice, scientific research, and training, and support indigenous community self-help initiatives like this group. This group is of indigenous traditional healers. It's a legal entity. Its membership is an umbrella organization of indigenous traditional healers from 3 districts of Mpigi, Butambala, and Gomba. The membership to this project was 20 indigenous healers highly affected by COVID-19 and were selected from the existing HIV/AIDS affected self-help groups within the districts. The project objective is to commercialize traditional medicine for worms and anemia based on ancestral knowledge and natural resources. We were to add value and produce and market the product. Our training started with the development of a business plan, which had theoretical and practical sessions. The business plan addressed income and healthcare access as our project. We focused on anemia and worms, and we based our practice, we based on ancestral knowledge. The training also addressed the 4 pillars of marketing, enterprise training and implementation. And by the end of the business plan, we had a timeline, itemized budget, and summary. The 4 pillars of marketing that were addressed included products. We had to have 2 products for worms and intestinal anemia, and they were to be packed as tea bags and plastic containers of 50 grams. We went through the cost of the raw materials, all the inputs, and then determined the sales price. We looked for we addressed where we shall be selling our products, mainly after the notification with the National Drug Authority, but currently we are selling our products to our traditional healers groups and clients and within our local communities. But for promotion of the product, we intend, after the notification with the authorities, we intend to address the issue in primary schools, and then have our drugs, our herbal medicines in shops and pharmacies. The trainings also involved workshops and meetings that exposed the indigenous healers to commercial cultivation of medicinal plants. We were taken through selection of herbal medicines for intestinal anemia and worms, harvesting and post-harvesting handling of herbs. And this we got special people from the national officials from the National Drug Authority, such that we do the right thing the way they are required. Then marketing, sales and fundamentals of corporate business. For commercial cultivation, exposure of the indigenous healers, we went to another district in Wakiso, where we visited a commercial cultivator of medicinal plants for production. He himself also produces, as he also sells raw material. He sells raw material, he sells finished products, and also half processed products. So it was a good exposure, and our indigenous healers benefited. We all benefited, and the healers insisted on going with their children, which was very productive for them as well. We completed the processing facility, which has 3 rooms, and we did the outside and inside of it, such that the surfaces are very easy to clean, and also they are tidy, and they meet the required standard by the National Drug Authority. We procured equipment that included locally fabricated machines with these healers' specifications. Those included the crusher, steamer, and distiller. We also procured storage containers and ready-made equipment that included the grinder, sealer, computers, printer, and a digital weighing scale. These procured equipment were inspected by the authority officials from National Drug Authority, and they passed them. And when they also inspected, we also invited them to, we took them through, they requested us to take them through the process of how we are going to produce the herbal product, which we processed, that we shall get the root bark, cut it to pieces, dry it, steam it, drain it, dry it again, we roast it and make it into fine powders, and the leaves are processed into dry powders as well. The herbal product is put on hot water, and taken as tea. They were to be packed as tea bags and also in plastic containers. The National Drug Authority officials then told us and give us the details that for notification to the National Drug Authority of our herbal products, we shall need to provide a process flow, because it is a prerequisite by the authority, and the standard operating procedures for the production and packaging. Now, this to us required more training, which we underwent. Also required we shall furnish reports on phytochemical analysis, toxicity studies, and microbial, biological, and chemical contaminants. So with the advice from National Drug Authority, we got a consultant, and we had the process flow developed with our participation. The consultant really engaged us in the process of developing the process flow. And also together with the Dr. Skeagya Institute of Traditional Medicine, we made a detailed standard operating procedure for the production of the herbal products. this is how we are currently packing our products, the improved way, but not yet for commercial purposes, but meanwhile, for massive production, but meanwhile, we are using them we are selling to our healers communities and other communities around us. So the need for process flow, the need for notification with the National Drug Authority, commercial production, marketing, and engagement of the microfinance institutions were delayed by the need for the process flow and the standard operating procedures. The process flow also produced other challenges or exposed other challenges that we were notified to be aware of and have solutions for. We needed to have sheds for raw materials, also an area for pre-sorting and pre-cleaning, drying and pre-storage of clean sorted materials. So we had not provided for those sheds, but they are a prerequisite for our project to continue. Equally, our water source did not pass the requirements, so we were advised to drill underground water and possibly use a submersive solar-driven water pump. We were to secure space for storage of the finished products. We don't have electricity at the center, so a stronger generator is required. And also for marketing, we were advised to consider having a motorized tricycle for production and the distribution of the products. Now, for these challenges, some steps have been taken. Working for improved water source, Dr. Skeagya Institute, the institute has gone ahead to drill the underground water, and in partnership with the Mbara University of Science and Technology, the Department of Farm Biotrack, they have offered to provide to donate a submersive solar-driven water pump and also help the water into the factory. The water also, their interest is because they have identified us as people who can provide them with raw materials. So we are going to be irrigating our area to produce the raw material for herbal products. So we have now a challenge for the sheds that are required and also a strong generator and a tricycle for distribution. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me, and that's my contact. Thank you very much for listening.
All right. That was Skeagya from Uganda. Thank you so much, Skeagya. Skeagya is actually on FeedLoop, and I don't know if you're on the app, but there's already a question on the FeedLoop app here, and the question is, thank you so much for a super interesting panel. Was this project evaluated? And I can tell you, no, it has not yet been evaluated. What are the key lessons learned about supporting income generation projects for Indigenous people living with HIV that could be adopted in other places? And hey, Rajesh, do you feel like taking a shot at that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Trevor.
What are the key lessons learned?
Okay, the key lessons learning are especially low fund opportunity. The funding scale is low, it's minimum funding. So the first lesson must be, it must be open funding, a little bit more targeting with community groups, not individual, I mean big groups. So it must be, the funding rate must be increased. And then must be with meaningful involvement of indigenous HIV positive. First, we have to create indigenous HIV positive network. Then after we could do that, that is another lesson learning. And then it must be guided, technically guided by media, I mean business houses. So we must incorporate with the business houses to grow and to take surf up. Otherwise, as we are, as indigenous people and HIV positive people, they are unaware about business elements, marketing strategies, and the funding opportunities, I mean funding doors. So this could be a lesson learning from my experience. Thank you, Trevor. Namaste.
Namaste, Rajesh. So what I'm hearing is that building relationships with financial institutions would be really important for the sustainability. So once the money runs out, the seed money runs out, hopefully over that year of using the seed money, that a relationship has been established with like a microfinancing institution or a bank who can give loans to keep it going, so the profit pays off the loans and it becomes a self-sustaining enterprise. Is that what I'm hearing, Rajesh?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Trevor, for correcting and facilitating.
No, I was just saying it a different way, making sure I understood you correctly. I understood you well.
Well, actually, my mother tongue is Nepali, so I'm not that much expert in English. So sometimes I still get a problem to explain what I want to say in words. So that's the problem. Thank you.
So Skeagya, I'm wondering if you have a good connection from Uganda. You want to take a shot at that? Like, what are the lessons learned about this project that can be adopted in other countries? And I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. What I learned, okay, I'm in darkness, I'm in a car. Traditional healers are willing to learn. They are willing to learn new things. And also the exposure to income facilities, income generating perspectives was very good. And what I put forward is that given opportunities, more indigenous healers can be exposed to commercial aspects of their indigenous knowledge. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. That was Skeagya Yahaya Hills from Uganda. We had Rajesh Didya from Nepal, and we had Didya from Switzerland, Geneva. And I'm Trevor Stratton with Communities, Alliances, and Networks. I thank you very, very much for coming to the session, and I'm sorry the question and answer period was about this big. So thank you very much, Chimi Gwech, and have a great day. Oh, don't forget that at the end of all sessions on the FeedLoop app, there's an evaluation button in the lower right-hand corner. The other thing is that I believe that all slide decks, PowerPoint slide decks, are saved in the presenters' profiles. So there you go. Thank you very much.